What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Tim Macy Show. Special guest on today, Marie, or Move Me to Tennessee on Instagram. And Marie, let's dive right into it. One thing is, you talk about some different, you make some content on your social media that I think other people make, but don't get the same amount of traction as you do. What do you do to take topics and make them more engaging for social so they actually grow an audience and actually convert to business?
That's a great question. Would love to talk more about that. Do you have anything in mind? Is there a specific video that's popping out to you or anything that you've seen on my end?
One of your ones that got a bunch of engagement was there's people out there with less money than you buying homes and scoring deals simply because they decided to start. And I feel like a lot of agents do go ahead and get out there like content and it falls flat. You've done some stuff talking about interest rates and other stuff. You do some things talking about the market. Like you do things that I've seen other agents do, yet you're doing it in a way that's getting a lot more engagement and a lot more comments. And so I know it's usually
Yeah.
small things that make a really big difference. And so I just like to dig into what you think those things are.
I think that I'm very conscious about not using the word I in my content. So I'm not talking about it myself. I'm talking about it from somebody else's point of view, or I'm presenting other people information. So today I had a post where I was talking about the best time, or if you're wanting to save money when buying a home, you don't need to time the market. You just need to have the right agent. And instead of saying, I saved my clients $310,000 last year, I'm like, hey, we did
Yeah.
this. And how do we do it? We did it by XYZ and talked about what that looked like in the caption. So I think a really small tweak is, what's the point of view that you are presenting this information? Are you presenting it as somebody who's the expert and you're trying to teach somebody on it? Or are you presenting it where you're like on a level playing field and you're talking to the masses? I think that perspective switch is huge, and it invites more people to engage with your content because people like to engage with people who they feel like they're on a level playing field with, rather than somebody who's, up on a pedestal. So I think just being as cognizant of your communication is a really great tool to invite people into conversations or even just engaging with your content.
It's funny you say that now that I'm looking at your content. You do
Mm-hmm.
use you a lot. It says, can you help us find the perfect home? You're looking to move across the country to buy your Nashville home. You don't need to time the market. You just need the right realtor. And so many times you're right. Agents are talking about, look at me, look what I did, look what I did. And your content is very much directed at the person that's consuming it. And so I'm reading another one, what you worry your realtor is thinking about and what your realtor is actually thinking about. But it says, say, hey, what you think I'm thinking about, what I'm actually thinking. It says, no, what you think your realtor is thinking about. And what happens is when you use that framing, when you say what you worry your realtor is thinking about, you're not saying that that
Mm-hmm.
you're their realtor, right? Like I say, I'm your realtor. And it's like, no, you don't want to do that. You don't want to assume that you're their realtor. But when you say stop sabotaging your home search, you're saying like this home buy experience is theirs. And so you use the word you a lot. And by doing that, you're planting the seed that you can be their agent. And that's what I think is super powerful
I
about
like
what
to
you're
think
doing.
about it and from a perspective like, how can I help somebody visualize something? So how can I paint this picture for them so they feel like it's achievable and accessible? And I feel like using that you framing is a key way of doing that. And then just breaking it down on the emotional side and the logical side. I think sometimes we think about real estate from a very logical perspective, but in reality, it's a very emotional process. So oftentimes I'll use emotional words or try to kind of paint what the emotions are looking like, positive or negative, to just be as clear and transparent as possible.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, I mean, I think it's just such a small tweak. It's like you've got the beautiful home here, and now you get to call this home. It's such a great house and such a great little piece of content. And was this
Nope.
Your house? I forgot. I
Yeah.
forgot what the story was here. But you said, imagine sacrificing the 8 years to get this home and everything else. And again, it's just something that the way you frame it and the way you're talking to it, it's someone that understands how social media works. And again, I'm hoping that people listening to this can take away things that will allow them to tweak their content so they can start making more engaging stuff that generates business. And when I watch your stuff, I can just say, oh, she's got a feel for how people engage with content. And so I know you watch other agents' content. And so I do want to get back to like where you think people make mistakes, because some of trying to get us going in the right direction is acknowledging the wrong direction. And so what else are you seeing that agents are doing that isn't really working, but maybe something that you've tweaked and done in a creative way to make
I
it work?
think when people are posting just listed and just sold or under contract post, like I think we can
Yeah.
all agree that that's maybe a little old school and not the most effective anymore. So I like to try to put little spins on that. I normally don't put those as reels or feed posts, but I like to put them in my stories, and I like to tell a story behind it. So if we saved a certain amount of money, or we got X number of offers on a property, or we were able to facilitate something across the country that was extremely complicated, but we made it as seamless as possible. So I think when you're talking about just listed, just sold, under contract posts, those are very agent focused. And I like to try and once again spin that and talk more so about the people who I'm working with or the client wins, or talk about, what was my role in this? If I was providing them a strategy, or if I was giving them resources to accomplish this. I try to make the client the hero always, or the potential client the hero. I feel like that's something that people can make a really quick tweak, and it can just live on their highlight section.
Yeah, I love that. Doing a lot of things in stories where it's a lot more forgiving. You don't have to get it perfect or get it right in stories because it disappears. And then, yeah, highlights I think are pretty underutilized. I see you have a client wins highlight just for that. I think like having deal diaries in your highlights where you show all the houses that you've closed and people get to just scroll through that if they want to. You're not clogging their feed with it, but if they decide to go down the rabbit hole of who you are, like highlights and stories is a great place to play. I love the way your profile is set up. I think it's really clean and all that fun stuff. But I think sometimes agents get a little too caught up on making sure their
Mm.
profile looks perfect. So, being someone who has a very nice looking profile, like where do you rate that in importance when it comes to putting, your
I
Instagram together?
think on the on the theme of today, like communication, probably the most important part. What's the messaging that you're putting across? When it comes to having a good looking profile, to me, I could care less about what your feed looks like. I just want to know, who are you helping, what do you do, and why can you help me? I think if you're going to focus on what your profile looks like, your bio is the biggest thing that you should be focusing on, and just making sure that you have a very concise message of who you're helping, why you're qualified to help them, and how they could benefit from your help. I would say if you've got a clear cut bio, your feed could look, I don't know, I don't want to say trash, but you don't have to care about what it looks like. I specifically want to have a set aesthetic of what I'm trying to achieve, just because I want people to have that idea of brand identity. When they see these colors or they see
Yeah.
these fonts, I'm automatically coming to mind. But it didn't always start out that way. I wasn't focused on that for maybe the first year or two while I was creating content. I feel like that's been a rather recent thing. And I feel like it makes things look a lot more cohesive, but it's just a small piece of the puzzle. It makes content creation easy because I know what font I'm going to use. I know what color I'm going to use. I basically have a template, I guess, by using the same thing over and over. I'm not reinventing the wheel all the time, but I don't know. Repetition's great.
Yeah, I think just agents get the order mixed up. And what I mean by that is I've got agents who like don't really have a following, they haven't really cracked the code, they haven't really figured out what their kind of content is, and they're asking me about what should their YouTube banner look like?
Yeah.
Nobody's watching the YouTube channel. If you get people watching your YouTube channel, let's worry about the banner. If you start creating an audience on Instagram, like maybe we should start making the colors similar and the font similar and start building a brand. But to do that before you're like cracked the code on building an audience, you're kind of like
Yeah,
wasting your time.
100%.
So you are touching on different systems and different stuff for when leads come in. You have a link tree kind of thing on the profile, but what else are the best ways to go from creating content that's generating likes, generating comments, creating an audience and engaging with it to converting into the DMs and the inquiries and the emails and the phone calls? Like, what's that look like, and what have you learned about that process to
Yeah.
make it a little bit
So
better?
my funnel goes like this. I have attraction up here, and I'm attracting people to content that I'm putting out. Once people are attracted to me, they've seen a reel, or maybe they're coming across some posts and they go to my profile. The next thing that I want them to do is to connect with me. So that's step 2 of the funnel. They can connect with me by going to the link in my profile, and then I have multiple ways for people to connect there. They can contact me with some of the buttons that I have up there on the very top. They can schedule a call with me on their own accord, so whatever time works best for them. I have a scheduler, Calendly. That's the first button that I have on my link and bio. And then I have 2 other ways for people to connect with me, and that is either by downloading a free home buyer guide or by opting into emails. So I like to, once I get them connected, I then nurture them with a once a month email. That newsletter is identifying what's going on in the local market, as well as some client wins, like what am I seeing that's working in transactions or for deals. I'm highlighting potential client needs, giving a personal update. I'm focusing on doing this once a month, but that once a month email is keeping me top of mind, in addition to my content continually being put out. So I feel like I have multiple points of entry for people depending on where they're at. If they're hot and ready, then we can go ahead and schedule a call. If they're interested but not quite ready, they can download a guide and then get these emails from me. I feel like having multiple points of entry is really great to capture anyone. So with that being said, what questions do you have about that?
I would say it's definitely a balance. I like Linktree because it just cleanly gives them different things, different ideas, so they can engage. They can click whatever feels comfortable to them. But we've also had it where if we throw too many options at people, people don't know where to start. And so what I love about yours is it says work with me,
Mhm.
15-minute call. So if I want to get a hold of Marie, like, it's very easy. I know where to go. If I'm just looking to maybe get a little bit more in her world, I can sign up for the newsletter. I can do some other things. But I do think one of the things I like most about what you have is it's very clear how to get in contact with you if that's where I'm at. Because sometimes, I go back to, I was just doing a YouTube talk, so this is kind of top of mind. But we had a client reach out to one of our agents and say, hey, like, I wanted to connect with you, but I didn't know whether I was supposed to DM you on Instagram, or I was supposed to call you or go to your Facebook page. Cause like I had all these options and I didn't, it wasn't clear like what the way I was supposed to connect with you was. And so I think there's a balance between giving people lots of options so they can feel comfortable going with the choice that's for them, but making it very clear how they could connect with you if they're like ready to, inquire. Cause some people, like you said, are ready and they're just like, Marie, I want to buy a house, pre-approved, coming in this weekend. I need to connect with you. Other people just want to watch a couple reels. They're kind of interested. They want to get to know you a little bit better. Maybe they want to get in the newsletter. They want the home buying guide. They want to learn more about you. And so I think just having those options is great, but having a very clear way to say, hey, if you're ready, like,
Right.
hit this
And
button.
can I
That's how
give
you'll
a
get in
little
touch with me.
perspective on
Yeah.
that? The majority of
Yeah.
the people who I work with are people who are booking calls with me. They are not sending me DMs. They are not commenting on my videos. They are going in and directly scheduling a conversation with me. So I might not even know that they've ever watched my content or engaged with my content, but sometimes people will lurk and never really engage, but because they have such a clear, concise option for them, they know how to have a conversation. So even today, I just got off a call with somebody who booked a call with me. They're like, hey, I'm looking to make the move to Nashville. And within the month, I have like a 30-day window. So I'm ready to hit the ground running. So we were able to have that 15-minute conversation and schedule out a game plan for him on what next best steps would look like.
I love that. I mean, Calendly calls are the highest converting
Mm-hmm.
people. Like if somebody's willing to book a call on the schedule, get on the call,
Yeah.
they're usually in. Like rarely are those tire kicking leads. Like those are already converted leads. And I think the thing that, when I go back to that thing of you being newer in the business and getting these leads on social media, and a lot of my other agents who have been in it for longer not being able to figure out social media, the thing I think is most powerful about what you're doing is the quality of lead you get when you do this stuff. Because when I got started, we used to spend money on online leads with a 3% conversion. You got to go get 100 leads to go get 3 buyers. And this is just such a better way to, not, I wouldn't say a better way to get leads because ads still work, all that stuff still works. But the quality of leads you get when you build things out this
Yeah,
way is
I
just
feel
way
like
better.
I've kind of reclaimed my time. This is obviously what's working for me, so I went all in on it. But there was a point and period in time where I was door knocking and cold calling and doing all the open houses, and I just felt like I was running around all the time. Whereas now, and those leads weren't really ready to take action. They required more nurture, and I didn't have those systems down pat. So once I started noticing, like, hey, there are some quality people out here for me to work with, and they're like raising their hand saying like, hey, I want to work with you, then I was like, all right, it's probably worth my time to really double down on this and just focus on seeing how many kinds of conversations we can generate here.
Okay, I want to dive back into the content itself. One, you have done some posts that have gotten a lot of negative comments. Talk to me about dealing with negative comments.
If I get a negative comment, I try not to respond right away because I don't know, it might not come across on social. I try to be very intentional about the kind of personality that I'm putting out there. But if I were responding right in the thick of it, I would be extremely sarcastic and probably very passive. And I don't want that kind of negativity on my page any more than it occasionally comes across. So I'll normally give myself a buffer of time, but I do want to engage with negative comments because that's what social media is. It's social. You're trying to engage with other people and have a conversation. So after I kind of let things die down, then I'll go back into the comments and I'll try to spin it in a way where I am giving a different perspective or giving an explanation as to why something might happen. So I had a video that went viral a couple of weeks ago, and the main negativity was around this idea that you could buy a starter home to get into a dream home. And a lot of the negativity that was surrounding it was the fact that people could no longer afford starter homes, that now their dream home has also gone up significantly in price, and maybe they can no longer afford it. So I spent a lot of time trying to paint the picture of like, hey, no, this is exactly how this works. You're using this equity and appreciation to then put down a larger down payment, which would allow you to afford more. So trying not to get too hasty on it, but also trying to use this as an opportunity to have a conversation, to teach some things. I think once we had a string of responses like that, it then generated some curiosity comments where people were asking questions like, hey, actually, how do I know how much equity I have in my home? And then I'm able to communicate back with them, hey, like reach back out to your agent, ask for a home equity report, etc. So negativity is going to come and go. I think how you respond to it is huge. People look at the comments a lot to kind of identify, what kind of person you are. But I would say I wouldn't ignore them. I would invite them in for a conversation.
A couple things on that. One, this post that you did that got 21,000 likes. I don't know do you know offhand what you're at for
I
views on that one?
think it's over well, it's not 1.1. I think it's like maybe, yeah,
It's a million.
whatever.
So a
Yeah.
million views. Okay. So Marie makes piece content about a great topic about buying a starter home that you can afford, lower end of your budget so you can work equity into your dream home. Like, you shouldn't buy your dream home off the bat. Like, it's a very good message. And she has 343 comments on this video. And a lot of them are complaining about affordability, which, look, like, affordability is very tough right now. There's nothing wrong with that, but a lot of them are negative comments. But here's the deal. 343 comments. There's 22,000 likes and 1 million views. So, of the 343 comments, let's talk worst case scenario. Let's say 200 of the 343 comments are negative. So say it's 200 negative comments. What happens on these pieces of content is you let those 200 negative comments live in your mind, and you forget that there were 21,000 likes. 21,000 people liked it. A million people watched it. And 200 negative comments actually doesn't sound that bad when you put it into perspective. But it's funny because that's where our mind goes, and that's what we get hung up on. The other thing, like you said, you engage with the comments in some ways, but you're never going to change people's mind in a comment section. And like, we just need to acknowledge that, because so many times we see something and you're like, oh, I am going to respond and change their mind. Like, they're not going to change their mind. It's a social media comment section. Nobody's mind ever gets changed in a comment section. Perspective changes happen in real life with real people, not in comment sections. But I think the thing that you were getting at was, this thing had 1 million views, which means there was probably 500,000 people that were reading comments. And so when Marie is responding to comments and she's engaging with people, she's not engaging with the comment for the person that commented. She's engaging with the comment for the 1 million views that are going to go read those comments. And so we get so caught up in the person that's commenting, when in actuality, we need to be making those comments for the people that are watching your content. And I think that's the thing where we get caught up.
100%.
So the other thing I want to talk about on that, because the content is simply 2 shots and you're not in them. And it's a short video, and it actually doesn't say that much. It says very little. And so talk to me about some of your shorter content, just with music, not you talking. Like, that stuff is hitting. And guess what? From a production standpoint, which is always the biggest challenge, oh, how do I make all this content? It's so simple, so easy to make. So tell me more about the thought process that goes
Yeah,
into those
so I like
videos.
to think about my content serving 2 purposes. One is awareness and just trying to get myself out there in front of people, whether they know it or not. And I mean that because we're talking about this one particular video. I'm not even in the video, but so awareness, conversion. And conversion is usually where I'm on the screen, maybe talking about something a little bit more in depth. I'm doing a talking head video where I'm explaining the situation or giving a perspective, or where, yeah, I'm trying to offer a piece of advice. I would think, oh, hey, like Marie knows what she's talking about. That kind of content typically takes longer to record, and I have to think about it. Normally I have to script it. I'm in front of the camera, and takes a long time. That content usually doesn't get a lot of engagement, but it's really key to developing trust. Now, my awareness content is the majority of my content, and a lot of that is short videos where I'm using B-roll content, which is stuff that I have previously recorded with whatever I was doing. Maybe I was showing a home, or maybe I was doing something in my everyday, and I just decided to put my phone up, capture some video. Sometimes that's me working behind the scenes. Sometimes that's just showing off like what I'm doing. And then I'm using those little bite-sized pieces to either stream together a compilation of videos or Yeah, I'm taking all these videos and creating things from it. So it's not like in this one particular video, we're talking about the 1 million view video. I didn't go from one house to another. I had videos of these houses that I had already worked with at completely different periods of time that showcase what this looks like. Somebody who had just bought a starter home, it's not the exact
Yeah.
home that I used. And then the dream home, it's not the exact home that I sold. But being able to just give a visualization of what that looks like, that's where B-roll content comes into play. And because I have this all on my phone and I have like a content library, content creation becomes a lot easier when I stopped recording and I started documenting what was going on.
So I want to unpack a couple things there. One, if people have listened to me for the last year, they're gonna like turn off this podcast right now because I'm gonna talk about my favorite term again, which is curiosity, meaning you aren't like you're in a lot of these posts, you're saying very little. You're saying very little, and you have a long, in-depth caption where you write out a lot more. And the thing is as agents, we love to tell people everything. And what's fun about some of the content you're doing is you're saying very little, you're writing a lot in the caption, and then people watch your video. They're like, "What is this?" And then they click the caption, and then they read the caption, and they're kind of interested. Then they go read the comments, and guess what? You just got 7 views because the video is only 8 seconds long, and the whole deal. So some of this stuff you're saying very little, you're piquing curiosity instead of trying to tell everybody everything they need to know, which does really well. The other thing that I find interesting, because I'm stalking your page as I talk to you, you did a video that got 18,000 views where you said your starter home is the first step to buying your dream home. And what's funny is you did that video, I don't know, a couple months ago or something in the summer. You did it, yeah, a while ago. And it did okay. Like it did fine. And then you redid it. It's essentially the same video that got 1 million views. You just did the same topic a little bit different. You tweaked the same topic. It got 1 million views and it blew up. And I think that's the big thing too, is we're constantly like, God, what am I going to do a video about? What am I going to do a video about? Go back and look at some of your good content and just redo it. Do it a little bit differently but as agents, I think we're like, we get in our own head of, oh, I already did that video. Do it again. Make it a little bit different. Tweak it. I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll do a video and I'll be like, oh man, this one's going to hit. This is such a good topic. It's going to crush it. And then I put the video out and it doesn't do much. And I'm like, dang, what happened? I should go do it again because it was probably like a small tweak. I could do it a little bit differently, structure the video a little bit differently, have it take off. And so I love that video you did that took off and got 1 million views.
Yeah.
Was one you already did.
I think repetition's key. We keep talking about agents trying to reinvent the wheel. When you find something that works well, then run with it. People need to hear the message over and over and over again because we are forgetful people. We have the minds of a goldfish, especially in the current social media world. So yeah, I find myself consuming some of the same content over and over again. And instead of being peeved that I'm watching it again for a second or third time, I'm like, oh, hey, I'm actually really glad that they reshared this because I liked it the first time that they posted about it, but I forgot about it. And here we are a couple of months later. It's like, oh man, I'm really glad that they brought this back up to mind. And this is exactly what I needed to hear.
Love it. So you're really all in on Instagram. Is there anything on the technical, like Instagram side of things or anything you're seeing content wise that maybe you're changing a little bit going forward? Because we've talked a lot about what you've done, but I do want to touch on, what maybe you're tweaking going forward or what content you're doing more of for the
I
future.
feel like I used to do a lot of mortgage content where I was talking a lot about numbers. I feel like people really like talking about finances with real estate. And I found that those used to be some of my best performing videos. And then that was like a content pillar for me. I was like, all right, I've got to create mortgage content. I need to give some perspective or something on it. I've pretty much scrapped that. I noticed that it started performing less well for me over time. So that's something that I just scrapped. That's a piece of content I'm kind of going in on. I don't know. I'd say I keep saying visualization content. I feel like that's so broad, but I don't know. Trying to paint the picture of what it's like for us to work together. I feel like that content is doing really, really well. People want to know what it's like to work with you. So, like the post today of
Yeah.
how much money we've saved buyers, that type of content, it's high converting for me. Another thing I stopped doing, just super technical, and I actually just posted about this in my broadcast channel on my channel, is that I've stopped using geo hashtags on videos. I got to a point where when I was posting videos, I was tagging a location, I was using a bunch of hashtags. Then I had an option for topics, and I was going in and selecting topics. At one point, I felt like all three of those things did really well at exposing me to more and more people. But a couple of weeks ago, I had an agent that reached out to me. They're like, hey, fun fact, I stopped tagging my location and I noticed a huge increase in my views. And I was like, huh, interesting. Let me try it. So I think the last 3 or 4 videos that I have posted, I have not used locations. And I feel like my engagement has gone up and my exposure has gone up, especially with non-followers, which is what I want. Like if I'm wanting to grow my account, I want more non-followers to see my content. That's been something really interesting that I've been playing around with lately. Take with that what you will, but just testing it out
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah, I like that. I think from my experience with algorithms, which is funny because we all observe them. None of us work for Facebook and know what the algorithms do. But I think we start to get a feel for how some of this stuff works. And I think early on, when somebody just starts a YouTube channel or somebody just starts a Instagram profile, I think a lot of those geotags, tags, hashtags, I think all that stuff can kind of like be little things you throw out the algorithm and say, hey, my video is for people that live in Nashville. My video is for people that may be interested in real estate in Nashville. And so when you're trying to get traction and build an audience, a lot of times those things can help tell the algorithm who your channel's for. But once you have a profile like yours, the algorithm knows pretty well what kind of people are interested in your content. And then I think at that point, I'm just given what I feel like, right? It may have the opposite effect where the algorithm knows what your audience is, and now you've got this nice wide audience, and by geotagging and all this, you're
Yeah.
like narrowing it. And so I think that's a possible difference where when you're starting out, you need to narrow the audience by using the geotags, use the stuff so the algorithm figures out who your content is for, and then you start building this audience. And once you built an audience, I think you can wipe that stuff out because the algorithm just
Sure.
knows who your stuff's for. That's my thought. We'll see though. Who knows? Who knows? So love that. Anything like content specific wise, I do love the fact that you said you're focusing on helping people visualize what it's like to work with you. I think that is very important. I think agents get stuck on operational. Like we know what the operational stuff of our business is, where our content should be very aspirational. Like we should stick with aspirational content, not operational content. Hormozy, I heard Hormozy on a podcast, so it stuck with me. It's like if you're a travel agent, don't sell people TSA and picking a seat on your flight and going through security. Like that's all operational stuff. You sell them the beach. You sell them the beach on Hawaii. Like you talk about the mountains in Peru. Like you don't talk about the operational. No, nobody wants that. They want the aspirational. They're going to call you because they need help with the operational. But that's not the content that's going to drive business. But as agents, we love talking about pre-approvals and stuff that nobody cares about. And so I love that you've seen that in your content. But anything else on content that you're thinking about going
Yeah,
forward?
right now I don't know, we're talking about repurposing content. I'm trying to lean into repurposing so that way like when I'm creating
Yeah.
new content, I can focus on good content. I'm trying to lean into repurposing this year. I've done a couple of carousel swipes where I've done maybe a cover photo and then the reel has been on the second page. Those have done really well for me. I actually did a split test where I did a reel that was about a listing that I had. And then 30 minutes later, I posted the same exact thing, but it was the cover photo of the reel and then the actual reel on page 2. And that carousel post performed so much better. Like double the views, triple the engagement of
Interesting.
what the reel did. And I used the same. I did everything the same. I posted it essentially within the same period of time. I just wanted to see, hey, what's working best. So I thought, hey, if I'm testing this and this is what's showing up, I'm going to try that. So I'm pulling a lot of old content right now. In fact, I was about to do an old
Yeah.
banner swipe of stuff that's popped off in the past and just do an entire collection post on that. So once again, if you're seeing something that has worked out somewhat well for you, try it again. Or I'm trying it in different ways. So I'm taking the same captions, I'm taking the same types of content, but maybe I'm using a different video in the background, or maybe I used it as a Twitter post. Maybe I'm doing it with just the text on the screen. So I'm really trying to work smarter, not harder at this point in time. And I feel like I've got enough content out there, and most people do have enough content out there to identify what's working well for them. If they're wanting to double down and do more of that, the first step you could take is just focus on repurposing that.
In my last question, have you gotten many agent to agent referrals?
Agents who are
Okay.
looking to make the move themselves and they're like, hey, I want to be your client. So I do get a lot of agent to
Yeah.
agent referrals. I would say last year was primarily direct leads. Right now, I feel like I'm getting agents
Mhm.
constantly in my inbox of, hey, I've got somebody who's looking to make the move. So it's a good split of both. Great business for both lead sources, but love agent to agent referrals and direct leads. I kind of count them both as the same in terms of like, hey, this is a social media lead.
The reason I say that is because a lot of agents make content for agents and they're like, I could get agent to agent referrals. But you, I think, are a good example of doing it right, where you are making content for buyers, you're making content for the consumer, and other agents are still seeing it and they're still impressed by it. They're still engaging with it and they're still sending you business, even though you're not making content for agents. And so I love it because I've just seen far too many agents kind of waste their profile in some regards on making content for other agents. Where if you just hammer in on making content for your consumer, you still get agent referrals. You probably get more of them because you'll build a big audience as the person to go to
Yeah.
in your market. I love that. So look, we wrap up here. What's like one thing you'd want to leave agents with if they really want to look? And here's the agent I want you to think about. I want you to think about the agent that does the work. They make the content, they shoot the reels, they make the posts, but it's just not converting business and not growing an audience. Like, what's your advice? Last word for
I
those
think
people.
consistency is key. I was posting videos for almost a year before I started having consistent business from social. So I started my profile just around like 2,000 followers and created this content library essentially where I just kept showing up. I kept doing the thing. My followers weren't growing very much at all. But I still had a couple people here and there that were raising their hands. I think within that period of time is like 7 people total. And at one point, it was like, hey, is this even worth my time? So I just kept doing it. And then all of a sudden, because I had this big content library, I had a video that popped off and started getting a lot of views. Then that allowed me to start growing my following. People were going back and watching old videos, saving old videos, commenting on old things. It was just like a explosion of the remainder of the content that had been posted, and that is really what started to build the traction. So I know sometimes we get stingy and you feel like you're in the weeds and you're just doing the same. It takes time. I think it took me a total of 8 months, 18 months before I started having like a closing consistently, like once a month after that. So it'll happen. It takes time to build it. It took me quite a bit of time to get to this point, but if you're consistent with it, consistent with your messaging, it will pan out at some point in time.
And one thing too, I can tell just by our conversation is that you're analyzing the content you're putting out. You're trying to figure out why this worked or why this didn't work. And I think that's a big thing that you've done really well at. You do the work and put the content out, which obviously is the important step, but you also really dig in and analyze, hey, why did this work? Why didn't this work? What should I try to do on the next one? And I think that's where you've really won the game, so to speak, and
Yeah,
how you've tweaked your content
appreciate it. I
over the
think
last
so.
couple of years. So, all right, where's the best place for people to connect with you?
Instagram, you'll find me at Move Me to Tennessee. Tennessee is spelled all the way out, and I hang out there in my DMs and in the comments. So come follow on.
Love it. Marie, it was great to have you on, and I'm sure I'll see you around. I'll see you at some event coming up, and yeah, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks,
Sounds like a
everybody.
plan.